Hello, great to be here. How are you? Welcome to the Beyond English Fluency session. I hope you're having a wonderful afternoon or evening or morning, depending on where you are. How are you doing this week? Welcome. So I'm Gemma Keeling, and I am a linguist, an English teacher, and communication coach. And I help professionals to achieve communication clarity and confidence. So I do go live every single week. Let me know if you can hear me okay. I am live on LinkedIn and on YouTube. So shout out if you're watching on YouTube. Let me know where you are listening in from. So if this is your first time watching me live, welcome. So good to have you here. And if you've just joined, let me know where you are watching from. Please say hi and where is it that you are listening from. So I am originally from the south of England, but I am currently living in Mexico. So I'm in Mexico right now. Let me know where you are. But in today's live session, we are going to do something a little bit different, and I will be sharing the 15 most essential phrasal verbs for business English communication. And typically in my live sessions, I cover a range of different topics. It's not always language, it's a little bit different today, but things like how to overcome common workplace challenges, communication challenges, some of the most common mistakes that I see professionals make, or even myself that I've made in my own language learning journey, and when it comes to reaching a higher level of fluency. And I typically share some of my best tips and strategies to support professionals with developing their English speaking fluency and communication confidence. So for those of you that don't know, I typically work with design and tech professionals, and I help them to transform their English speaking fluency, and especially so they can thrive in their professional career. So welcome. Let me know if you've just joined where you are listening from, and if you can hear me okay. I think we're all good by the looks of it. Let me just double check everything is okay and everyone can hear me okay. But I think so. Let's see. Yeah, perfect. Okay, nice. So I wanted to get started. As I said, in today's live session, I'm going to be sharing some of the most essential and also some challenging phrasal verbs. And the reason is because phrasal verbs can be quite tricky. It can be difficult. And especially when English is not your first language, typically, even if you have an advanced level, it might be that you understand one way of saying something. But recently, one of my own clients told me that she almost shared an email using the wrong phrasal verb, and it could have been really embarrassing. Luckily, she did check. But there are instances where, with phrasal verbs, even if you just slightly change them, they can have a very different meaning, which could be quite embarrassing and potentially bad, depending on which one it is and the context that you're using them in. So one also thing that is difficult is instead of just combining one word, they combine two or more to express an idea. So, for example, to get and to get up. I get up in the morning, for example, or I get a lot of sleep. And the meaning can be very different. And there's many examples that I'll be sharing today with you that also can have multiple meanings in different situations. And sometimes the meaning of a phrasal verb isn't obvious from the individual words. So it's not like you can decode it to understand, which makes them so challenging. And a main reason I get a lot of requests for vocabulary and especially phrasal verbs, because they are very challenging in English, even if you have a very advanced level. So that's why I wanted to share them with you today. So I'm going to share 15. It might be that we don't get through all of them, which is completely fine. I might have to share some at the next session, but I'm going to start with the first one. And in today's session, I'm just going to share them with you, and you can also write some of these down if you're watching the replay and to follow. Also, if it is helpful, I can put these into a nice document for you. Let me know if you would like a PDF guide, and I could do that if that's something that you think will be helpful. I'm also happy to share that as well. So let's start with the first one. And the first one is to set up. To set up. And to set up is one of those, again, that has many different meanings. To set up generally means to establish or to arrange something. So let's set up a meeting to discuss the project's progress. And this is one of the most common usages of to set up in business and everyday context. You probably hear this a lot. And it means to create or to organize or to arrange for a specific purpose. So, for example, we need to set up a new office, we need to set up a new space in the downtown area. And it might be that you said we need to set up a new folder before we start this project. I like to set up a Google Drive. Within my Google Drive, I will set up some different folders if I'm starting a new project. Let me know if you do the same, and how do you kind of organize and set up your projects. It could be that you set up your project in Asana or in a different platform. But typically when we're setting up, we're organizing and creating for a specific purpose. Now, it can also have a different meaning. The second meaning can be to prepare or get ready. So in some situations, when we set up, it can mean to prepare and get ready for a task or an event or a situation. So I might say we are setting up for the presentation in the conference room. And in this case, it means that in the conference room, you might be preparing the room. You might have to clear the tables and the chairs, and you're setting up. And it might be the same for an event, like we need to set up the hotel for the wedding. Like you're setting up means you're arranging specifically for an event, like setting up for the presentation. Now, another thing could be to install or assemble. So to set up can be like installing a new program or piece of equipment. So if you work in tech, you likely hear this a lot. So the IT department will set up a new computer system. So usually you set up something technical like machinery or equipment. And when I have to set up when I set up my new computer or I set up my new phone, there's usually that configuration. You have to fill out your information, is that process of initiating. That means, and we would say, to set up. So there's another meaning as well. So we're looking at the phrasal verb to set up, and it has already given you 4 different meanings, no, 3 different meanings. The 4th meaning is that it can be to set up or to start a business. So I have set up a new business. To set up is for a business or a company or an organization. So she set up her own consulting firm after having a few years of experience in the industry. And to set up in that case is, I would use it for a business. I'm setting up a business. Let me know, have you ever wanted to set up a business? Or maybe you already have set up a business. If so, what type of business have you set up? Or maybe a business that you would love to do one day, what would that be? I'd love to hear what you think. What kind of business would you like to set up? Or maybe you haven't done it, or you would like to do it. Maybe you already have set up a business. And then finally, it can also be, and this is an informal situation, you're less likely to hear this at work, but to set up in a very informal situation can mean that you are framing someone, or that you arrange a situation, like you have a hidden agenda. So I'll give you some examples. You might say, I've been set up. I didn't do anything wrong. So you might be set up. Maybe you were, there was a crime and you were at the situation when it happened at the wrong place, wrong time. And maybe they thought, oh, it was you. That means you were set up. You didn't do anything wrong, but you say, I've been set up. Or it could be that your co-workers try to set you up by maybe spreading false rumors about you, and it can be very bad for your reputation. Or it can be if there's some suspicion or a belief, some hidden agenda in some way. So setup can have more of an informal meaning, to frame someone for something that they didn't necessarily do. I've been set up wrongly. I didn't commit the crime, I was set up. So it has also a more of an informal meaning, a colloquial meaning. So that's the first one that we've looked at, is to set up. But I would love to know, let me know in the comments, have you ever wanted to set up your own business? Or maybe you have set up a business. And if so, what is the business that you have set up? So let me know what that is. I would love to read your comments if you're watching the replay, or if you're here with me, let me know. Okay, so let's have a look at the second one. So if you've just joined, I am sharing with you some different phrasal verbs and the 15 that I think are most essential for professional situations, for professional use. Okay, so the second one that we're looking at is to follow up. To follow up. Let's share this, see if I can share this one. Yeah, the next one is to follow up. So to follow up is typically when we monitor or check on the progress of a situation. So it is used in business when you want to check the progress or the status of a project, the progress of a task. So you might say, I will follow up with the client to ensure that they received our proposal. And this is used when we want to make sure things are moving forward as planned. I need to follow up to make sure everything is continuing to happen as it should be. So it can mean to continue or to take further action. It might be that you need to follow up after an interview. If you haven't heard anything, you might need to take action. You want to follow up by sending a message to your HR manager. Maybe you want to follow up to see if you have a second interview. And in this case, it means to take the next step in the process. So have you ever had to follow up after an interview? Let me know if you've had an interview recently. Are you having to chase, to follow up, to check on the progress? I know that's something in the past. If you do have an interview, you're always like following up, like what's the next step, and trying to see if you have that next process, that next interview. And now another meaning can also be to, more in a broader sense, to pursue something. So to follow up can mean to follow up on your plans, or let's say the company plans to follow up on new market opportunities. So it's more of a general sense of pursuing something or investigating something further. So that's the next one. The second one is to follow up. It's to to check in with someone, to continue to take action, or to monitor progress of something. So it can be to check in. So like you will hear it also in emails like, hey, I just wanted to follow up with you to see if you've had a chance to review the report. So you're checking in to remind someone. That is also to follow up with someone. And it can also be when you are seeking feedback. So I need to follow up with the team to get their feedback on the project's performance. So following up can mean to get feedback, to seek feedback from someone on a project. So let me know, have you ever had to follow up on a matter? So for example, have you had to follow up after an interview or follow up on a project to get some feedback? So it's used in lots of different varieties of contexts, just like the first one we've looked at. So we have to follow up. Now, let's have a look at another one. Let me just take a moment. If you're just joining me, hello, welcome. I am sharing about the 15 essential phrasal verbs. I don't think we will get to go through all of them today, but I'm at least going to share 5 of them because I think it's helpful to give you more of a context. And the thing is with phrasal verbs is they can be so complicated because they're used in very specific situations. And I find that even if you have a very advanced, even a fluent level of English, that they can still be very tricky because it's contextual. And it's not always easy or obvious from the individual words to understand the meaning of phrasal verbs. So they are expressions and phrases that we need to understand in the specific context. So recently someone told me that she had an issue where with one particular phrasal verb, and in that context, sometimes it's, for example, you say up instead of on, like back up or back out, even though both of them use back, are very similar sounding, but actually the meaning can be very different. So the first one we looked at was to set up, and I shared the different meanings for that. And then we've also looked at to follow up. So now let's look at the third one. So the third one is to carry out, to carry out. So typically, to carry out means to complete a task or execute a plan or action. So for example, we will carry out the marketing campaign next week. And that's a very common usage in a business situation. To carry out can also mean to implement. So it can mean we're going to implement a strategy or a decision or a policy. So the company decided to carry out the new safety measures. And in this context, it's about putting it into action. It can also mean to perform. So what are the tasks that you do in your job? What are things that you do regularly? I have to carry out, is meaning the responsibility that you have. So it's crucial to carry out regular, let's say regular checks on social media, depending on what your job is. So it means to the performance of ongoing or routine tasks that you do in your job that you carry out. And then we also have to conduct. So one thing is when it comes to research. Now, for example, the researchers need to carry out user research. Now, in some cases, you might just say they need to do research. And if you want to find a different way of expressing yourself, you would say the researchers need to carry out user research. You would carry out research or an experiment, or you carry out an investigation. So let me know if we have any researchers watching and listening. It's that process of conducting an experiment or a study. We would carry out a study, we would carry out user research, we would carry out an experiment. That's what we'll carry out an experiment. So that's the next one that I have. Let's move on to number 4. Let me know if you have any questions as we go through. If you are watching the replay, just let me know. If you have any questions about anything, feel free to either send me a message or just let me know as well. So we have the next one, and that is to back up. So to back up is to provide support or evidence for something. So thinking about research, it might be with data or evidence or a claim. To back up means to provide support or evidence or proof of a claim or a statement or an argument. So can you back up your argument with some data? Now, one thing I hear a lot, especially with those that work in design, is that it can be difficult to back up your design decisions. If you have to back up, design can be very subjective, and I hear that quite often is it's quite difficult to back up. And usually you have to carry out some user tests to have that support for your argument. So let me know, do you think it is difficult to back up your decisions? Do you find it difficult to do that, to back up your decisions? And it's very important to back up your decisions. It's really crucial when you are wanting to have a convincing argument and to really establish your credibility. You need to back up what you're saying. And it doesn't matter what industry you work in, you always want to back up and support your ideas and have evidence to support what you're saying. So it can also mean to validate with proof. So you're verifying something. And again, it's still a very similar meaning. So the research findings back up the theory we've been discussing. So in this case, it's really emphasizing the confirmation of the theory or the idea. Now, another usage, which if you work with computers, which many of you do, it's likely that you've heard this one before. And to back up can mean to duplicate a copy or to create a copy. So for example, if you are opening a Word document or a file on your computer, you might want to back it up. And you back it up, you're creating either a duplicate copy or you're saving it in a different system, or you have put some protection in place just to make sure for recovery. And for example, I might say you need to make sure to back up your documents regularly to prevent any loss of data. And that's something that I have done myself. I remember one time at university, I was writing an assignment and I think I had just a couple of hours to finish. It was my first year at university and one of the first assignments I ever had to hand in to the university a very long time ago. And I didn't back up my file and my computer died. And that was a lesson that I will never forget, is to back up my documents, to save a copy to my Google Drive, to save a copy. I ended up sending an email to myself, just always try to back up my documents, because I cried. It was very upsetting. Thank goodness I was able to, it was a small assignment, so I was able to do it again, but I learned a very important lesson of backing up my work. So I never lose any important documents. So I'd like to know, how often do you back up the data on your computer? Is that something that you do daily? How do you back up? So that never happens to you. Thankfully, after that bad experience, I did learn my lesson, and now I will always do my best to back up everything. There's times, and luckily there's improvements in technology and systems now that will automatically save, which didn't happen when I had to write that assignment. So I'd like to know, how do you back up the data on your computer or any of your files? So that's something that is very important, and an important phrasal verb, and it has different meanings. So as I've said, to back up can be to back up, duplicate a file to make sure that it is saved. You have a copy that's safe. You back up your documents, meaning you save just so you don't lose them. To back up can also mean to support evidence to what you're saying, to provide evidence to your claim, to back up your argument. Okay, so it's number 4. So I think so far we have been looking at a few different phrasal verbs that are important and essential really when it comes to professional environments. So we've looked at to set up, and to set up means to establish or arrange something. Typically, as I've shared, it has multiple meanings as well. And number 2, we also looked at to follow up. So to follow up means to monitor or to check the progress of something. You would hear it a lot in emails. Hey, I just wanted to follow up on the latest project. How is everything going? And thirdly, we also looked at to carry out. So to carry out is usually to complete or to execute a task or plan. And then we also just looked at to back up. Usually it means to provide support and evidence for a claim, but it can also mean to duplicate a copy to back up your files. So many of these I've shared have many different multiple meanings, and I've shared quite a few, but actually they have even more than what I could share with you in today's session. So that's why I think it's so important to be aware of these usages and why they can be so difficult, and something that I know is so frequently asked for by my audience and by my own clients. They say, this is something I really need help with. So hence why I'm doing this session today. It has been requested. Okay, and then finally we have one more. I think we have time just for one more that I will share with you. So the final one I wanted to share with you is to run out. So to run out typically means when you exhaust or you have a limited supply of something and you no longer have that resource or time. So for example, we ran out of milk, or we ran out of water. I need to buy more water. It usually means that we need to get more from the store. We ran out of milk. We don't have any left. So this is usually a tip, it's relatively straightforward usage, meaning there's none left of something to run out. It can also mean to reach a point of insufficiency. So when you no longer have enough of something, I might, for example, run out of patience. If you have to wait in traffic, you might run out of patience. Or if you're waiting in a long queue for something, you might run out of patience. Or typically we would use it with patience. I ran out of patience. I no longer have enough patience to continue waiting in line, or I ran out of energy, I ran out of patience. Now, another thing is to be without something, more in a general sense. So I might say I ran out of ideas. I have no inspiration. I really need some help. I ran out of ideas for the project. So typically that's, again, a state of not having enough or lacking. I'm lacking ideas. I've ran out of ideas. So again, it can also mean, has another meaning. It can mean to exhaust opportunities or options. So we've ran out of options, or we've ran out of alternatives. We need to make a decision now. We have no other option left. We've ran out of options. And that's more of meaning between choices. We only have these 3 options left. We've ran out of options. If you go to a store, they might say, yeah, we've run out of sugar, or we've ran out of milk. Or you might say, we've ran out of office supplies. We've ran out of paper in the printer. I need to replace the printer. I need to replace the paper in the printer because we have no paper left. So we would say we ran out of something. So it usually means that there's limited availability, or you're lacking generally in a resource. So it happened very recently that we drove to a different city, and all of a sudden we were driving, there was no traffic, and then we came almost to a stop. And at the time I thought, okay, it's lunchtime, and if you live in a busy city like in Mexico, there's usually a lot of traffic. So I thought, okay, it must be that there's just traffic, it's rush hour. But it turns out that the town that we had to drive through had ran out of water. And because the town didn't have water for a week, they'd ran out of water, they were protesting because they didn't have water. So it's obviously a very important resource. They were very angry, and they were negotiating with the Mexican government. It was a very, very small town, and they had ran out of water. So usually it's to experience a shortage of something you can use to run out. But yeah, it might be that you run out of ideas. You might run out of time, which I think today we have run out of time. So it's a good one to end with. But I just wanted to recap on what we've looked at so far. And perhaps next week we can continue with the next 5. Let me know what you think, if that sounds good, if you'd like to do that. But today we looked at to set up, so to establish or arrange something. We also looked at to follow up. So to follow up is if you're checking on the progress of something. To carry out, which means to complete or execute a task or a plan. And then the 4th one we looked at was to back up. To back up can be to back up your ideas, to back up with evidence, or it could be to back up your files so you don't lose them. And then finally, we looked at to run out of. To run out of means you have limited supply of something. We've ran out of paper, or we've ran out of office supplies, or we've run out of ideas, we've run out of time. So if you've enjoyed this mini lesson today, I hope you found it helpful. If you have, let me know. But hopefully this has been interesting. I know phrasal verbs are very challenging, and like I said, there's many different meanings, even with just one, and we change it very slightly and it has a completely different meaning. So I hope you found this insightful. But if you are looking to develop your professional vocabulary, or perhaps your speaking fluency, whether that's for your job, or you have a particular project, or you started a new role, feel free to send me a message. I can share some different resources with you, and potentially also ways that we can work together and ways that I can support you. So I do get a lot of requests for help with vocabulary. So I really do hope that you found today's live session helpful. If you are watching the replay, let me know which like which specific phrasal verb you have found helpful, or if there is any specific language in future sessions you'd like me to cover, let me know, and I'd be happy to listen. Like I said, this was a request. This is something that the community have asked for, so that's why I'm doing that today. But either way, I always love hearing from you and reading your comments. Feel free to send me a message with any questions you have, and I'd be more than happy to support you. But thank you for joining me today. We've only been able to look at 5 today, so I think we will cover more in our next session. But thank you so much. It's so great to have you join me, and I look forward to seeing you very soon. I do go live every week, so I will see you next week. Take care. Goodbye.